Modern world is a weird place to be. We are capable of many great achievements like landing on the moon and launching a telescope into outer space. But we still fight wars for crude oil and still manufacture outdated internal combustion engines in the age of information and technology. Current global emergencies that we face are created because of the decisions we made that would create global long term imbalance with little to no awareness to the world's citizens. In this episode, I present a hypothetical world that would we all be living in today if we made alternate decisions as an individual in the past and the present by understanding bigger picture in global level than only making decisions on personal or communal level for short term and short sighted benefits. I'm your host Sandeep Uranti. Welcome to my podcast on sustainability crisis, and this episode is the Cobra effect. During British colonial rule in India, British government was concerned about number of venomous cobras in Delhi. So the British government offered a bounty for every dead cobra. Initially it was a successful strategy as large number of cobras were killed for the reward. Eventually, however, people began to breed cobras for the income and the wild cobra population was further increased. This is actually referred as Cobra effect. So, any new law at political level, no matter how noble the intent is, they have to be careful of unintended consequences that would eventually do more harm than good. If we look back at history, there are some milestones that accelerated our current world to face immense emergencies that are very hard to deal with. One of those milestones is invention of thermal engines. Sure, they made trade easier and also transported people, but it do not take an expert to note that these early engines, which depended heavily on burning coal and crude oil, were emitting large amounts of pollutants. It may take a scientist to figure out the global warming, but anyone in their right mind can figure out that these pollutants are certainly not good for our lungs. So instead of focusing on finding better alternatives, we continue to keep consuming fossil fuels and brought upon us unintended consequences. Otherwise, we would have been in an alternate situation right now with no deaths from air pollution. So we solved transportation, but unintentionally we created global warming. Such another milestone is agriculture. Agriculture provided food security and eventually created surplus by international trading. Today, almost everything is packed and transported across the world in shipping containers. This is a result of capitalistic system that encourages never-ending demand. As a result, everyone needs everything, and the inherent meaning of need has shifted from potatoes to bananas and now avocados. We have transformed our lives from demand driven to supply driven. Historically, civilizations thrived on international trade, but goods were used to be valued for the sake of goods. But now everything is valued on the stock market. The intention of agriculture, international trade, and global food supply was to feed people, but it came with unintended consequences of massive deforestation and capitalistic price wars. These are only a few examples, but the list goes on in both political level and personal level. Every day we do things that are intended for betterment of society and everyone around us. But how many of us do really understand the consequences of our daily actions? Sometimes we may not even have a choice to do the right thing. But what matters in these times is simply acknowledge the fact that we are not doing the right thing and come out of that bubble we think that do not exist. The more we acknowledge the small things around us, the more we will understand what is going wrong in the world. Eventually, we should go around and demand our lawmakers to make right strategies. We have reached a point where we started to live in a very self reflective society. And in the past 10 years, social media made it only worse because the single person has become the epicenter of economy, epicenter of everything. The mirage that all services are tailor made around us because we can create our own service package on our phone. We can have our food delivered at our home. We started to live in this world that everything revolves around us on demand. This has led us to a place where any emergency we may face can only be fought globally but not individually because of how much dependent we are on global supply chain and on-demand services. After all, we are a group of people living together in a global ecosystem, sharing resources. And by doing so, we must also share the consequences of these actions. But fear and uncertainty are more powerful than any kind of emotion. And unpreparedness brings the most fatal consequence than any other ignorance. We had a chance to change our habits and make better choices, which could have led us towards an alternate universe, which would have been very much different and better than one we are in right now. We still have a chance to change our habits, but are we capable of learning from the past and present to act upon our future to come? I would say certainly yes. That brings us to the end of another podcast. Please do share your comments via email or direct message as always. I'm also open for a dialogue if you may be interested in. And please keep thinking innovative, think sustainable. And if you have been listening, thank you so much for tuning in.